afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Washington Campbell, and with me on our tour of the cemetery today is my granddaughter, Miss Hattie Brown. Would you say good afternoon, Hattie?
Good afternoon, Hattie.
I also want to welcome you this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Powhatan Maxey. My good friends like George here call me PW. I was a tinsmith by trade, but I served as mayor of Nashville from 1843 to 1845. Prior to serving as mayor, I served as alderman. I was elected to the county clerk for 8 years prior to my election as mayor. Later in my life, during the Civil War, where I was a staunch unionist, I also served as the chief pension agent under President Andrew Johnson.
I was born in Scotland, educated at Princeton University. I became a United States Senator, a United States District Court judge. I was briefly the Secretary of the United States Treasury, and I was the first Tennessean to receive a major foreign appointment when I was designated to be the ambassador of the United States to the nation of Russia, where my wife and I befriended the royal family there.
So you see, that George and I were two very influential persons here in Nashville back in the early 1840s. And what we want to tell you a little bit about today is the role that we played in bringing the permanent home of the Tennessee state capitol here to Nashville. You see, George and another former mayor, Bill Nickel, they together own this little hill right up here.
Little hill. Now, PW, let me set the record straight. Campbell's Hill, then, as it does today, towers 200 feet above the Cumberland River. And though it's hard to tell because it's surrounded by high-rise buildings today, that made it at the time a prominent landmark that was visible from all across the city. And we felt, PW and I, that it ought to play an important role in the history of our city and perhaps in our state.
So let me give you a little bit of background. Since 1827, the Tennessee State Legislature had been meeting in various cities around the state. They met in Knoxville, they met in Kingston, they met just down the road in Murfreesboro. And those three cities, as well as several others, were vying to be the permanent home of the Tennessee state capitol. But the legislature put a deadline on themselves. In 1833, they said that within 10 years, a permanent home must be selected. And as you may recall, in 1843, yours truly was serving as mayor of this great city. So George and I got together and crafted a plan.
As the deadline approached and no city had been designated as the permanent home for the Capitol, we figured we might be able to influence the decision. We had a vision that a great state capitol building would stand on Campbell's Hill where it could overlook the entire city and in fact the entire state. So William Nickel and I got together and we sold the property to the city of Nashville for $30,000 in 1843.
So as mayor, I was able to arrange and persuade the county court to approve that $30,000 purchase, and we purchased that hill from George and his colleague Bill Nickel. Now, Nashville had something that no other competing city had. And when I offered that property to the state legislature, it was enough to persuade them to vote that Nashville would become the future home of the permanent state capitol.